This is Real News Media TV, coverage you can trust. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates. Former insurance company employee pleads guilty to embezzlement. Former employee of British Caribbean insurance company BCIC, Crystal Burke, has pleaded guilty to embezzling more than $400,000 from the company. She is to return to the Kingston and the St. Andrew Parish Court on May 19 for sentencing. The company discovered in 2019 that Burke was directly collecting a customer's insurance premiums. The payments were not reflected on the customer's insurance policies, and as a result, his policies were cancelled. BCIC became aware of the embezzlement when the customer came to the office to report an incident involving one of his motorcycles. The customer informed the BCIC that he had transferred monies to Burke's account to be paid for his insurance premiums. Based on the customer's explanation and the receipts he presented, BCIC had to honor his claim, and he received $94,000 as compensation for the accident. BCIC suffered a loss of $440,073.66 for the unpaid premiums. Burke pleaded guilty to the charge of embezzlement in February and has since compensated BCIC for the loss incurred. Mental health support for tourism workers. Tourism workers experiencing COVID-19 related mental health challenges will soon be able to access counseling support services under a newly established program dubbed Talk Your Mind. The multi-stakeholder initiative is being spearheaded by the Tourism Ministry's Tourism Linkages, Health and Wellness Network and will be executed by the University of the West Indies Center for Leadership and Governance. Support is also being provided by the Tourism Enhancement Fund. The program was launched on Wednesday during a brief ceremony at the UWI's regional headquarters, Mona St. Andrew. It aims to raise awareness among tourism workers about who they can contact if they believe they are experiencing anxiety, depression, mental confusion, social deprivation, and stress resulting from COVID-19. Counselors and psychologists will also be identified within resort areas to provide the requisite interventions. An initial 10 counselors, inclusive of clinical and psychology associates and the students of the UWI's clinical psychology program, have already been onboarded to provide support. Their services will be formalized with the signing of contracts shortly. Tourism workers requiring psychology support services will be able to interact with these and other targeted counselors via the program's website www.talkyourmind.com, slated to go live soon. Minister of Tourism Edmund Bartlett welcomed the initiative and commended the stakeholder input facilitating its development in a speech delivered by TEF Executive Director Dr. Kerry Wallace. He said research shows that a significant number of tourism workers globally have been affected by mental health challenges since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, pointing out that we also noticed that pattern here in Jamaica. There is no doubt that that state of mind would have affected productivity, efficiencies, job satisfaction, and it can manifest in the form of self-harm and harm to others, Bartlett added. He said in recognition of the tourism sector's importance to Jamaica's development, the Talk Your Mind project was created with the goal of implementing concrete solutions to address the growing mental health concerns among local tourism workers. Bartlett also assured that the ministry will continue to offer health and wellness support to the workers through the COVID-19 vaccination program. Jamaicans among offenders freed after fines paid by Food for the Poor. 2 Jamaicans were among over 100 non-violent offenders who had their fines paid by international charity Food for the Poor as part of its tradition for Holy Week. The initiative benefited a total of 187 non-violent offenders across Guyana, Haiti, and Jamaica. According to the organization, many of those imprisoned for stealing to feed their families and committing minor crimes are unable to pay the fines required for their release. It cited extreme overcrowding and the lack of access to adequate food, water, and health care as among the difficult conditions that prisoners in those countries often endure, in many cases over long periods. Those freed this year include a 19-year-old first-time offender from Jamaica who was one of two nonviolent inmates released from the St. Catherine Adult Correctional Center. The organization says he was detained and arrested for violating curfew and driving without a license and had spent nearly 3 months behind bars on account of being unable to pay the fine. The young inmate had a sincere gratitude for the Food for the Poor and its donors. "If I could see you, I would hug you," he was quoted as saying. "You have made my day. You have made my entire life. As simple as it is, I have been longing to go outside. The plan after leaving is to continue raising goats and to get some training to become a certified tiler. You have changed my life." Ed Rain, CEO and president of Food for the Poor, noted that while the organization condemns criminal behavior, it views it as a terrible thing for persons to spend months and even years in prison simply because they were unable to pay fines. Life in prison is not easy, and in the countries where Food for the Poor works, prisons can be dangerous and sometimes deadly environments for inmates, he said, adding that the training and reintegration of nonviolent prisoners back into the community as a productive sentences is critical. Air traffic controllers determining next move after being barred from industrial action. The Jamaica Air Traffic Controllers Association is examining its legal options following Thursday's order by the Industrial Disputes Tribunal that it refrain from taking industrial action. JATCA President Curtis Solomon says he disagrees with the procedure being adopted to deal with the wage dispute. Thursday's order was the latest round in the situation, which escalated after the association served a wage claim on the Finance Ministry in May 2021. The order issued by the IDT acknowledges an industrial dispute between JATCA and the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority. However, Mr. Solomon is asserting that the association's claim was made on the Finance Ministry and not the JCAA. This distinction is causing a challenge.
We're exploring the relationship with the Ministry of Transport and Mining, whom has promised that they will dialogue with the Ministry of Finance on behalf of the authority, the JCAA. That's one. Two, we have our first tribunal sitting is scheduled for the 30th of May. That's quite some time away. So we have indicated our disagreement with the terms of reference, and the process requires us now to go back to the Ministry of Labour to treat with the terms of reference. But the Ministry of Labour in particular has stated that they cannot help us if we are saying we have an issue with the Ministry of Finance. They can only help us if we have an issue with our employer. That's a sticking point. So one of the other avenues we have to look at is other legal channels that may be available. For example, especially in light of what is happening with public sector compensation review and us not being a part of that review. We have to look at those options because, again, having served a claim in May 2021, and we're fast approaching May 2022 and have not really started negotiations with our employers, all these things are coming to a head and creating no ends of problems here at the authority.
Curfew imposed in Waterford, St. Catherine. A curfew has been imposed in sections of Waterford in the St. Catherine South Police Division in response to tension associated with two recent murders, one committed last Saturday and the other occurring on Wednesday. The curfew began at 6 o'clock Thursday evening and will remain in effect until 6 o'clock Saturday evening. Superintendent Hopton Nicholson, the acting head of the St. Catherine South Police Division, says that the police will be carrying out a number of operations during the 48-hour period. The police are also seeking a number of persons of interest in the area, including a man known as Malidon, as well as Uton Davis, otherwise called Scouty, Donovan Shaky Stewart, and Damian Stewart, also known as Benny. Superintendent Nicholson says the men should turn themselves into the Portmore Criminal Investigations Branch for questioning.
There's been some heightened tension in the Waterford area since the murder of Kamar Davis, OC Dragon, on Saturday evening, and another murder which was committed on Wednesday, April 13, in the same area. Now, based on what is going on in that space, we have taken the decision to halt the current crime trends, and we will carry out some operational activities. So, 48 hours curfew was implemented. Now, in the Waterford area, there are some persons of interest that we would like to speak to. One known as Mally Don, another person known as Utan Davis, otherwise known as Coty. A gentleman known as Donovan Stewart is also known as Shaky, and one Damian Stewart, OC Benny. We're asking these persons to turn themselves over to the Portmore CIB, and they will be questioned.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates.